Hi, I'm Rigger. This is You Are Right, and today we're discussing sad moms. Before that though, be sure to like the video if you like it, share everything else would like, and let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and subscribe if you want to see more. So today, real quickly, I wanted to consider one of those floating characters, just sitting on the fringes of our story, and that's Willow. There's actually a fair bit to consider here. See, it's easy to say we want this and we don't want that for our central main characters, and those are the main discussion points. But there are more fringe characters, and they're less heavily considered in how we use them. Most of the audience's interaction with them is more through like fan art and, fan fiction and those sort of things. They're sort of left on the fringes a lot. Willow, as a character in the show, is kind of frustrating, simply because of how little we see her versus how much a lot of us want to see her. Now, they do justify how little we see her, or they can, but that doesn't mean you couldn't see more of her if you want to. Since she absolutely is among those who went to Vaccuo, it leaves the door open for her to be involved in events. So, let me flesh out my thoughts here. Obviously, we're not about to make the story about Willow, but the question is more, should she be involved, to finally move out of basically completely the background? With Weiss presumed dead, Winter with her new powers and without a superior for the first time, and Jacques also dead, the Schnee family is in quite a state. We saw a progression on Whitley as a character as well, but now we've moved out of a place where he can really be useful as an active component. But since it does seem like Winter as a character might be a little bit more central to events, her reconnecting with her mother and brother to deal with everything that's happened to them and happened to Atlas and happened to the world, well, that has potential as a strong setup for something we can use in the story. Rather than saying like Whitley's growth is just done because he had his moment and leaving him with Willow in the background, we can adapt his growth into more growth for the family as a whole. The easiest part by far to attack about Willow's character and possible progression is her drinking. How she deals with it and, suggesting she's gotten over it just because of that one event is laughable and just as bad as when they did with Crow. It's just not how that works. But we could hope to do that and expand on it. We have Whitley, Winter, and of course Klein on hand. They're all together as characters in the same place and, along the same goals. So, all them helping her cope, either without alcohol or weaning off it for her own good, then they could all grow together. Because the point of that is actually for Winter to grow. What we're doing is we're facilitating character growth for someone more central. Because she should be emotionally very distraught right now and quite broken. Rage and hate towards Cinder, loss for Weiss, loss for Penny, feelings of failure, having her ideals challenged, new responsibilities and powers at her disposal, and confusion at the whole situation along with everyone else. So, a catalyst for her to deal with her emotions would be very useful, and a broken people growing together is always a good angle on that, especially when they have prior connection, like obviously being family, and they all have their own issues to solve together. Because my other thoughts, if we don't do this, it leaves Willow wallowing in woe, which is fun to say, but not fun for her. Even if we're pretending she's overcome her drinking demons, reconnected with her son and all is good now, but no. She's lost her home, she's lost her daughter, she's lost her husband despite how bad he was, and she's now dumped into a foreign land among people a lot of whom will hate her for who she is, and with no resources at her disposal. If left unchecked, or even with just Klein around, should she fall heavily into a depression, it could be the worst one yet. Yeah, be strong for Whitley, and for Klein, he's there to help, but those factors also existed in the past in her much cushier, nice life, without all the other terrible factors, and she couldn't do it. Now she's in this situation and things are worse. Clearly she isn't equipped to deal with her emotional state at the best of times, let alone this terrible time she's in now. If there's one thing she's expressed a true deep care about, it's her kids. All of her kids. But you can't just bet on the fact that her want to say help Whitley will not be outweighed by the crushing loss of Weiss. Emotions aren't fair, particularly to those with habits and predispositions towards being affected strongly, especially in the negative. So, while it isn't always relevant, I think it'd be worthwhile to consider the logical path for her emotionally. One of the big points about how Vaccuo got to where it is it got wrecked by industrialization, and the main feature of that was actually the SDC. Now, again, that could be quite bad for Willow and Whitley, in that a lot of people here may also hate them. And since there was the embargo and the lack of global communication, who knows how any of that would be going at this point. But if Jacques is declared dead, and Whitley is head of the SDC now, that would extend to their operations in Vaccuo. The SDC was global and has mines everywhere, and they could try and manage them. So if bureaucracy cooperates, which it very much might not, they might have some power in Vaccuo, but given the type of place that it is, it's also very questionable if that will actually be anything or apply. It's just simply an element that you could go down if you wanted to. You could just not address it, or you could use it if you wanted to consider factors for this storyline. If we don't just set Whitley aside and say his character arc is done, and instead continue it in the background of events alongside his mother, that'd feel more complete and real. But then, it also calls into question if we have the time for that, which is fair. Constraints of the show aside, I think it'd feel a lot nicer and more complete to see Willow go on a journey along with her family, since we've established that they are here in the close of Volume 8. And Winter is in such a terrible place emotionally herself. Continuing to repair the Schnee family would be a nice sort of continuation of theming that we've started all the way back in, well, I mean technically Volume 3, but really Volume 7. It has been a consistent element, especially in 7 and 8, so we could just continue to keep it as a theme in the show, and this change of location and change of settings would just help, further along the other relationships that are happening, not just those with Weiss. See, with Volume 8, we technically paid off the setups, right? Like Weiss and Whitley, they had, such a quick and easy resolution, but they did have a resolution. But continuing that idea for the whole family would be a nice, mature, and fulfilling bit of storytelling. And, to tie it back to our main character, it'd be a lovely and heartwarming situation for Weiss to return to come back to a more whole family, to share and embrace with her mother, brother, and sister all together as a unit, and Klein, of course. Because what I was also thinking about is the pressure it's going to put on people like Winter. She is the maiden, which is a huge responsibility, but she's also, I guess, the default leader of the Atlas people now. I mean, she's in a high-ranking position, she was just under Ironwood, she is a face of the military and leadership, although they might have lost faith in that military and leadership, but she did then save everyone at the end, so there's a good chance people will look to her as a symbol of what to do, look to her for guidance, So when it comes to dealing with, the people of Vaccuo and this sort of mob that just got dumped on their doorstep, she might be the de facto leader, and that's a lot of responsibility to take. So having her family in the background to support her, especially after the family history that we've, heard about, that might be really, really nice. Rather than just our main sort of characters are the ones, when I say main characters, you know what I mean? Like Nora and Ren and Oscar and them, rather than it just being that she falls back on them because they're the main characters, she falls back into her actual family, people she has connections with, real connections with, and reforges those. Remember, as far as anyone else knows, Team RWBY are dead, and Jean. So they have to deal with that as if it's quite real. And again, you're talking about Willow losing a daughter, Winter losing a sister. So if we just leave, Willow and Whitley in the background, to just say that they're mourning together and they're fine and just push them off to the side, then you're sort of not paying off what you could really get out of this whole situation. It is one of the frustrations you get with a story like this, where we know that they're fine, but we have to keep watching characters you think they're dead, and that might get annoying. And that is true if you spend too much time on it, but if you get something more out of it, if they bond over their feelings, you can, create a real story. And what that also means is you build up really good fodder for later. Because if you get to know Willow and Winter and Whitley, and you get to know their sort of, new family bond, their bright futures and what they all want from each other, and, you get the depth to their characters, well, then put them in peril and suddenly you care a lot more. Not to mention, as I've said many times, and as lots of people have said, and it's true, RWBY has too many characters. And while you might say, well, that's a good thing, then we'll shave off these characters we don't need, well, rather than that, leave them because we already know them, rather than introduce a new character to fill the same role. There's going to be new characters because we're in a whole new location, but if we can cut down the amount of characters we have to interact with and keep as many that we already know as possible, in the story frame, then it's just less new stuff to pile on. It's easier to go along with. And you have to remember less new things, which is good for an audience, especially if you're trying to do emotional depth storylines and possibly politics as well, which might come into this, which can be quite boring. So you at least want people you connect with and know, not a whole bunch of new people you don't care about spouting gibberish at you. That gets really old really fast. Because to, the headmaster, right, it's fine, he can talk to Oz. Oz is the authority. But the people aren't going to look to Oz as a leader. They don't know Oscar. And, the people of Vaccuo don't know Oscar. People of Atlas don't know Oscar. They're not going to care what Oscar says. So Oscar talks on behalf of, Osborn talks on behalf of, maybe what they should do and, to the headmaster. And then the headmaster talks to the people of Vaccuo. And then they talk to Winter, and Winter can talk to the people of Atlas. And it lets you cut down on the amount of, figureheads you have to get to know in this new place. place. And like I said, if then, a realistic version of Winter is left in this new place without much of a support structure around her, but her family is there, especially it's the better side of her family, then yeah, we should do this. And that's why I structure this whole thing around Willow, because she is the head of the family, but she sort of isn't, right? She's only the head at the moment because of age, but not by power or standing or, strength. So, that includes emotionally. So having them all grow together and bond together, especially outside of the sort of quote-unquote toxic Atlas environment, like not in her mansion and not with everything at their disposal, but, facing a real situation in a very real dangerous environment and a very new place, that's how you really bond people together. So, while it was nice seeing Willow alongside her son in the mansion and, fighting to help kill the Hound and those sort of things, you can strengthen that bond by then having them grow together in this new place where both of them are outcasts. And that's where you show how much Willow really does care, when she, makes personal sacrifices for Whitley to make him more comfortable or to try and, cater to him. And he can see how much his mother really cares, now they're in an environment where she can really express it. Where similarly the luxuries he's used to are no longer around. With Klein around as well to help, that's a support structure but for each other. And they can all make each other better and all grow together. And that would make a really satisfying conclusion and sort of result for that family and continue that storyline so that it's not like, oh, that was an Atlas story, it's all left behind in Atlas, because the people came too. So, since they're here, let's continue their story. It doesn't have to be front and center, like I said, we're not spending episodes on them, but they can be in the background, they can pop up, and we can see progression, and we can get like 1 or 2 scenes cut away to them to explore these ideas. And like I said, that means that eventually, when Wise comes back, she comes back to this whole new image of her family. And that would be really beautiful, considering how broken the family was, and considering that, Team RWBY is her family, and now she's been on a trip with them, they'll probably be even more bonded together because they're like, stranded off in Magic Land. She comes home and her family is whole. That's really beautiful, and she's the last piece that comes back into their lives. That's potentially really beautiful if they decide to go that route. Anyway, these are just the thoughts in my head, just something I was thinking about. It's not vital to the story at all. You can just leave all of this out and it doesn't really matter. But it's something worth considering nonetheless. Let me know what you think. Anyway, until next time, my name is Rigger, hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope I did alright.